In this tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate how to design an ergonomically designed handle for your tool caddy project. Now I've already created a side and I've given it, turned it into a component, so that's already been generated for this. I'm also going to show you just a few different ways of doing things that can be efficient. So we've got a new sketch and we're actually going to sketch off the inside face of the side here. So we need a rectangle and it needs to sort of join up to the top line here. It kind of doesn't matter exactly where you start from, but just as long as it's joining up to the top of the side. And in terms of dimensions, it's going to be 19 millimeters thick, which is a standard timber dimension, tab, and it's going to be 68 millimeters wide. You can see, I'll just pan down a little bit. You can see it's not centered on that face, which is, we do want it to be centered on the face. So we're going to give it a midpoint constraint. So if we just select our midpoint constraint, select this line here, then this line here, you can see it's now sitting in the middle. Okay, we'll zoom in. Now what we want to do is we want to create the geometry for our tenon and mortise. So again, we're going to draw a rectangle, and at the moment it doesn't really matter, you know, where it is in there or what the dimensions are on it. Now we're going to set up, you know, some geometry for it. So dimension, the first one I want to make the width of it, the thickness of it, 10 millimeters. Now that can be changed, but generally what you want to do is make a mortise and a tenon, either the width of, say, the mortise chisel that you might be using, 10 millimeters is quite common, or the width of the chisel that you might be using. And that can be usually either a 9 or a 10 millimeter chisel is quite normal. You can adjust as required. So we'll make that 10. The other thing that we want to put in here is you want to specify a distance down from the top and a distance up from the bottom. And in this case, we're going to specify 15 millimeters. So I'll just bring that right out here. And same again here. And then the final thing that we want to do, and I mean, we can do a little bit of mental arithmetic here. If this is 19 millimeters and that's 10 millimeters, we want a long shoulder of 4.5 millimeters. And you can see now that that's fully defined because all the lines have gone black. So we can finish that sketch. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll create the geometry for our handle. Now overall the handle is going to be 400 millimeters long, but that also includes the tenons, which are going through, you know, this 19 millimeter thick timber as well. So that basically means, you know, doing a little bit of mental arithmetic, that what we want is our handle is going to be 362 millimeters between these inside faces, or another way of putting it is the inside faces of each side will be 362 millimeters apart. So I'm going to now extrude this, not 362 millimeters, but half of that, 181. And it just gives me a little a shortcut in a minute. You'll see in a minute what I'm doing. Now I don't want that to be a join. I want it to be a new body. And again, I'm doing something a little bit different here for a good reason, and you'll see in a minute why. So new body, okay. So we've got that. Now the reason why I made this into a new body is because I want to mirror this later on, and when I mirror a body, I can actually combine those two bodies into one. But if it was a component, I wouldn't have that option. But we're not quite done yet. I'm just going to turn the side off and change my view slightly. Turn the second sketch back on and extrude again. And in this case, I'm creating the tenon. And so the tenon is going to be minus 20 millimeters. And it's going to be a join because I'm adding it to that particular body there. So we've got that. Then I'm going to turn that off turn my side back on, change my view again, and now I'm going to create the tenon. So we've got that, and that's going to be minus 20 millimeters, and it's going to be a cut. Okay, so we've now created all of that geometry. I can turn that sketch off, and just so I can see what's going on, I can turn that body on as well. So now I'm going to create another side without having to do anything because I'm going to mirror it. So we'll go to mirror. We're going to select components. We will select the side, and then the mirror plane is going to be this surface here. So you can see that appear out over there. So I go OK. Now I've got to do it for the handle itself. So we'll go create, mirror. This time we're going to change it to bodies, and we'll select this body. In terms of the operation, we'll change it to join, and the mirror plane, we'll select that, and that will be there. OK. So you can see it's created a single body there for the handle. Now we can, at this stage, we can, if we wish, now turn this into a component. So we'll just save as component. And then we'll give it a name. Now I'm going to demonstrate a way, and it's just one way, of changing the geometry of the handle to make it a little bit more comfortable. So the first thing we'll do, we might as well just hide the sides. And we're going to create a new sketch, and we're going to sketch straight off this face of the handle. All right, so we'll get it so we can see everything. Right now, that's just a big rectangular block that's 68 millimeters wide, and I'm just sort of thinking about what might feel comfortable in my hand, sort of in the middle here. And this is really just a guess, and it's something you can kind of play around with and experiment with. But I'm sort of thinking that maybe if the piece of timber is 19 millimeters thick, it might need to be about 40 millimeters wide to be a bit more comfortable in my hand. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to set up some construction lines just as guides. So I'm just going to set a horizontal line here. I'm just going to press escape and select that and turn it into a construction line. And again, 68 minus 40, 28 divided by 2. So dimension from there to there should be 14. And we'll do the same at the bottom as well. So D for dimension again. Sorry, not D for dimension, L for line. We'll just go straight across. Scope, I'll just make it making a construction line just makes it a lot easier when you need to extrude. D for dimension. And again, 14. The other thing too is when I'm going to create a curve on this, but I don't want to go all the way to the very end here because particularly, in the manufacturing process, depending on how it's cut, it might chip out here, and you want actually this shoulder here to be quite nice and square. So I'm going to go L for line again, and I'm just going to set up a vertical line, another one down here, and construction lines again. And I want that to be, and you could alter this depending on what you want, but I'm going to say 15 millimeters. So D for dimension. So basically what I don't want to do is I don't want to come closer than 15 millimeters to the end in terms of, shaping my handle. So it just gives me a little guide there. Okay, so now what I want is I want to create an arc. So that'll be a 3-point arc. And I'm just going to go from there all the way across, down until I hit my line. Same again at the bottom. up until I hit my line. And you can see how you can change, you can change these parameters just depending on what actually works. So we've got everything on that sketch that we need. So we'll finish that sketch. So now that I've got that, I'm going to extrude. So this and this, and it's going to be a cut. Okay, so we've gotten rid of that material. So it's looking a little bit better, but it's still looking like it might be a little bit uncomfortable in the hand. So now we can create a fillet. So you might create this in the workshop. You might actually create this by using the round over bit on a router. So the next thing I've got to do is just select what edges I'm going to fillet. So there's quite a few that we've got to select here. We'll go around the other side. And then our fillet dimension. Now, it's very easy to start to get errors here. So if I say, look, it's going to be 10 millimeters, that has just worked. But if I want to edit that and change it, so if you want to sort of change anything that you've already done, you can actually go down here to the timeline and find that particular feature, right click on it and edit feature. Let's say I change that to 12 millimeters. I had a 12 millimeter round over bit. It's actually working. I thought that might not work. So I'll go back, edit feature. So that's quite good. Now a real sort of, you might use a 12 millimeter round over bit. The other one you might use is a 6 millimeter. So this is where you can sort of, play around with it to see what it looks like. So that's now a 6 millimeter, and I can turn my sides back on, and you can kind of see how this all starts to fit together. So that's all I've got for this particular tutorial. The purpose of this tutorial was to show you how you can create a through mortise and tenon joint and add some extra features to create an ergonomically designed handle. Obviously there's still other parts to go in here, like a shelf, perhaps a sliding tray or a drawer or something like that in your own design for assessment 2, but I've now shown you enough so that you should be able to proceed and complete this project.